Hello mga mamaps!
Hello, Papas! We have a very exciting video for you on this Thursday. One is we are celebrating something. Ano yun, Papa Jack?
It's the first year. 1 year na po ang facial value.
Yes! And because of that, mga mamas and papaps, we will place the link below for the mechanics of what, Papa Jack? Ano ba yung...
Mamimigay tayong premyo, di ba?
Yes, we will be giving a gift as a sign of our deep gratitude to all our subscribers and those who will still subscribe and follow Facial Value. And on this video, we have a very special topic and it is related to It's Okay Not to Be Okay K-drama. So, ang topic kasi ngayon, mga mamas and papaps, is about, ano yun, Papa Jack?
It's about overcoming loneliness, right?
Yes. The 7 steps of different kinds of loneliness. And for you not to be lonely, mga mamas and papaps, we are going to give something away. And you have to watch the entire video so that you will know our question, which is one of the mechanics of our giveaway. And the entire mechanics of our gift is a link that you can see on our Facebook page na Facial Value. Ayun. Nandun lahat kung paano kayo mananalo. Yes. Kaya, yung mga mamams and papaps, you have to watch the entire video and hopefully, it will relieve you from loneliness, di ba? Kasi nga, di ba, Papa Jack, these days kasi maraming taong nagiging lonely.
Oo nga mukhang ikaw nga, lonely ka lately,
Is light. Ayan. Mamas and papaps, hopefully, you get to watch the entire video and you will learn something and be able to win something. Ayan. So, don't go away, mga mamas and papaps. So, we're back and hopefully this video, even if we will be discussing about loneliness, we will help you not to be lonely. Ayan.
Please don't be lonely watching us. Baka naman you're very lonely watching us, okay?
Correct. And so, hopefully, this will accompany you if you are lonely. And as Dave said, being alone does not mean you are lonely. Di ba? Oh.
Of course.
Oh, yes. Oh, sige.
Sometimes you thrive
Ha?
being alone. You thrive in loneliness, right?
I try being alone. I have to deal with loneliness. Oh, di ba? Sige, number 1, Jack. One type of loneliness. Okay. The one is the new situation loneliness. Ano yun, mga mamas and papaps? Like, for example, you move into a new city or a new place and then you don't know anyone, diba? So the tendency is you're still trying to build connection to the people. And I experienced that, mga mamaps and papaps, because after I graduate in college, I ended up studying abroad and I went to the United States, and the idea of studying abroad was very exciting. Siyempre, bata pa ako noon, and then, siyempre, it will be a new place. It's the first time I'm going to the US, so everything is excited. But when I flew in the plane and arrived in the place, after a few days or weeks, after yung bumaba na yung excitement mo, then I felt a lot lonely. Kasi, when I got into iko-combine ko ng mga mamas and papas the second one yung I'm different loneliness. So the first one is you are in a new situation and then you are different kasi nga ang ending when I went to school, I'm the only Asian person in the school, and also mga mamas and papas, I'm the oldest kasi yung mga nag-aaral for the exam in the Illinois is dental exam, puro sila mga newly grads. So, and then they are in, they're all Americans, they have accents and all those stuff. So, I feel very different. So, what I did there is I try to, yun lang mga mamaps and papaps, ang nakatulong kasi sa akin is I'm extrovert. And then I also love to read books. So, what I did is I just applied, what I think is their culture. So, kumbaga sa ano nga, if you can beat them, join them. So, buti na lang mga mamaps and papaps, I know how to drink at that time kasi yung mga college days noon, inuman, yung mga ganyan.
Wala talaga ng loneliness yun.
Oo, yun. Hindi kasi kapag ka-introvert ka mga mamas and papas tapos napunta ka sa ganong klaseng atmosphere and then conservative ka, nabuti na lang hindi ako ganon nung panahon na yon, talagang parang your fish, your fish out of the water, parang ganon. So, yun yung i-deal mo mga mamaps and papaps. You try to adapt to your environment. And ay isa sa mga natutunan ko kasi ang sa babae kasi when you trying to adapt, you have to also be very careful kasi marami rin will take advantage of you, lalo na if you're a girl. So, but dahil bata ako, I was able to adapt quickly. So, ikaw, Jack, have you experienced those two kinds of loneliness wherein you are in a new place or in a new situation?
Naman, I think everybody experiences those situations, albeit in different occasions, no? So, for me, nung halimbawa, pag bagong lipat ka sa isang company, for example, or like, magkakakilala na silang lahat, or kahit iba yung position mo sa position nila, tapos sila magkakaibigan na. So, sometimes you feel left out, di ba? So, kaya minsan, pag magyaya sila, halimbawa na, tara, yosi tayo, di ba? Wala kang choice kundi sumama sa kanila kasi para makarelate ka sa kanila. Kasi, but then again, you feel estranged, kumbaga, because you have a different experience with them. You haven't shared enough commonalities with them yet. So sometimes you feel, anong tawag dun? OP or out of place. So sometimes you feel lonely because of that. So yun yung mga na-experience ko before. Na siguro.
So what did you do in order to overcome the situation?
Siyempre, you do the best that you can to be able to relate with them. Kasi if you don't try to overcome that, it will only parang malalagay ka sa sitwasyon na parang mag-iisa ka na lang talaga. Kasi if you don't laugh with them, di ba, you cry alone, di ba? Wala namang gustong tao na gusto na makisama sa iyo kapag hindi maganda yung company mo, hindi ka masayaing tao, di ba? So it's very important that you strive to go with the flow. Ibig sabihin, mahirap kasi na ikaw kikimkimin mo siya, and people will misunderstand you because of this, and it will just dive deeper into loneliness. You will be much lonelier after.
Ayun na nga. So, we're the same. So, yun mga mamaps and papaps, when you are in the new situation, you really have to learn how to adapt. Alam mo yon,
So
you cannot, yes.
Try mo makibagay. Yeah.
Correct. Kasi you don't enclose yourself further, 'di ba? So, maybe at start, medyo pwede ka munang just to observe the people around you, the surroundings around you, yung mga ganon, learn more about the place you are in or the situation you are in. But later on, you really have to open yourself up, di ba, Jack?
Kaya lang, case-to-case basis rin yan kasi may mga tao talaga na mahirap talaga sa kanila, di ba? Depende sa sitwasyon. So, importante is you have to be comfortable with the situation. Kasi kung hindi ka komportable, hindi mo naman maitatago yan eh. Magre-reflect yan eh.
Okay. So, the third loneliness, Jack?
Well, ang sinasabi nga dito na ang isa sa mga types of loneliness is yung no sweetheart loneliness.
Yeah. Yan, mga mamas and papas, I believe a lot of you can relate, di ba? And by the way, please do watch our videos about relationships. At kung if you like Jack and I talking about relationships, which seems marami sa mga followers namin talaga yung organic who likes to watch our videos in relationship, please do watch those video playlist. Ayan. So mga mamas and papas, if you like us to continue about topics of becoming better in relationships, please do comment below. And what do you do when you become lonely? Ayan. Share naman kayo mga mamas and papas. And of course, ayan, if you like us to do these kinds of video, give us a thumbs up, do like our videos, and then do subscribe mga mamas and papas, because we really get less lonely and more inspired. Yan, if you watch our videos every Thursday. Of course, mga mamas and papas, if you like to get to be notified when we upload, hit that notification bell. Ayan. So, Jack, ikaw muna sa no sweetheart loneliness. Ayan.
Oo naman, lalo na pag ganitong pandemic, di ba? Wala kang kalandian man lang. Hindi naman kalandian. I mean, a lot of people still experience, kahit na yung walang boyfriend or girlfriend or walang asawa or walang partner, they still experience that kind of loneliness because primarily because probably wala silang connection kahit dun sa partners nila. So this kind of loneliness, just like every loneliness na i-discuss namin, ito happens to everyone. So don't feel na parang ikaw lang ba ang nakakaramdam nun. Everybody experiences that, feels that, and it can be addressed. Okay. So yun. Ikaw, anong na-experience mo about this?
Precisely, you are right. That is the reason why we are talking about loneliness, because minsan kasi you feel lonely because you feel that you are the only one who is experiencing the kind of feeling. Kasi, like for example, ako, sometimes, like, if you look at Facebook, photos, Instagram, lalo na yung mga lovey-doveys, tapos kung ikaw, heartbroken ka, di ba? Di ba you feel alone and lonely?
Kaya minsan parang ayoko nang tumingin sa social media,
honestly
speaking.
Oh.
Kasi a lot of these people naman talaga, you only show the happy moments.
Correct.
Sino ba nagpo-post ng mga
lonely,
sad moments, lonely moments, di ba?
Correct.
Kaya naman nagpo-post. Kaya lang, ang tingin nila sa'yo, para kang di ba, tawag dun? May tawag dun yung parang... Nalimutan ko na yung term. Senior moment.
Well, yun nga. Kasi nga, di ba? Oo. So, di ba pagka when you see pictures of happy couples, happy blah blah, romantic blah blah, di ba? Minsan you cannot help but feel jealous. And a lot of people, yan mga mamaps and papaps, this is one thing I would like to share, especially since our channel is about well-aging. So, as you grow older, the more you are afraid being alone. And sometimes, because you are afraid of being alone and feeling lonely, you tend not to get out in a bad situation. So, you just stay with it because you're too afraid. Now, that is one thing I've learned. You have to face your fear. Kasi, mga mamaps and papaps, we are born alone, we will die alone. So, the thing is, the loneliness is something, a part of life. And that's why we get to feel happiness, di ba? Kasi alam mo yung loneliness. So, pag naramdaman mo yung happiness, alam mong happy ka. So, not having a sweetheart does not mean you have to be lonely. Of course, it will be happier if you have someone special, di ba? Like ngayon, umuulan ba dyan, Jack?
Hindi ko alam.
Oh, dito
Umuulan.
kasi umuulan. So, pag mga ganyan, di ba? Yung pagka cold night and alam yon, napakasarap ng...
December.
Ha? Yes, napakasarap na... Oo, malapit na. So, Burr months na. So, napakasarap to think that you have a sweetheart. But, at the end of the day, what kind of a sweetheart do you have? Diba? Kasi pwede ka naman may sweetheart, pero lonely ka pa rin.
Yeah, yun ang sabi ko, di ba?
Oo.
So, wala kayong connection, wala kayong chemistry, you will still feel lonely.
Correct. So, kaya, mga mamaps and papaps, kung lonely kayo dahil wala kayong sweetheart or since birth, wala kayong sweetheart, you know.
Since birth?
Oo, di ba? Yung iba kasi since birth, walang...
Sorry, ako,
Oo.
dinidescribe mo pa ako?
Ay, ay nako, mamamas and papas, 10 things that men lie. Do watch that video. Yan, that's a lie. Next is the no animal loneliness. Ayan. So,
Yung animal loneliness.
di ba ikaw, di ba lagi ka naiinggit noon dati na si Shanti, at saka si Nero, and then suddenly you got a dog for yourself, di ba?
Kasi I think, it's one of the best things as best solution to be able to cure loneliness immediately. May instant gratification kasi kagad eh. Di ba?
Correct.
Kasi your dog, hindi nagreklamo yung aso eh. Kahit anong sabihin mo, kahit pagalitan mo siya, after nun, like na like ka pa rin niya. Di ba? So, yun yung maganda sa pets.
Correct. And ako mga mamaps and papaps, hindi ko pa siya na-experience, pero I think I will really experience loneliness and even depression if mawala na ang Shanti ko. Kasi my Shanti is already 14 years old. So, yon. Ang mapapayo ko lang dyan, mga mamaps and papaps, sabi nga nila, you go through it kasi especially if you love your pet like a family, 'di ba? So, yan. But true yung sinasabi ni Jack na minsan pets majority of the time they really give you a certain happiness na hindi nabibigay normally ng tao. Anyway, there are some organization that we want to support, and it's also one of ways in order for you to combat loneliness. And these are the organization that we hope that you will donate or adopt a pet.
Clan Animal Rehabilitation Center.
Island Rescue Organization.
We also have the Poston Project.
Kasi they don't betray you. they don't intentionally, maliciously hurt you. Diba? So, and that's going on the other type of loneliness, which is yung untrustworthy friends. Diba? Yan. Ang mga pets kasi walang ganyan.
Oo, and sometimes sabi nga nila, dogs feel when you're lonely. Diba?
Oo,
they
correct.
feel your emotion.
Oo.
So, kaya a lot of yung kahit sa mga like if you grow older, sabi nga nila, that's actually one of the scarier part of growing old kasi the more you feel alone when you grow old. Kaya marami sa mga home for the aged, they treat them with di ba, mga pets, yung mga pets na sila doon, sa hospitals, mga pets.
Kasi talagang they provide a certain kind of love. na humans is medyo difficult pa yung dependability no.
Yeah. And gusto ko sabihin yung na term yung unequivocal love.
Oh,
Diba?
yun.
Na
Okay.
hindi sila nangingi in return. Diba?
Oh, yun.
Please.
Ito naman yung isang type ng loneliness is no time for me to be lonely. Kasi may
Hindi ko
mga
nakuha.
tao kasi they are so busy with their life. Alam mo yun?
No time
Oh,
for me.
yun na they don't even feel anything. They just and then when they ended up exhausted and before they go to sleep, the tendency dun lang nila marirealize na they are actually lonely. 'Di ba? So, ako kasi na-experience ko yan before in terms of, kasi mga mamaps and papaps, I'm typically a workaholic person. Especially when I start a project, hindi ko siya maiwan hanggang di ko siya matapos. To the point that I can totally forget all the people around me. Yung mga talagang hindi ako tatayo niyan, hindi ako kakain, ganon. Ganon ako kaganyan, kakuku. And sometimes, once before you go to sleep, the tendency is you feel na parang you deprive yourself of experiencing the day because you are working into something that it may not even be that important. You know, at the end of the day, kasi minsan we love our job so much or what we're doing, but relationship still trumps work. Although,
And that's actually of loneliness actually kasi when you're too much into something and it does not go the way you expect it to be, diba? Like if you think you're really good at something, like sa work mo for example, and then it doesn't turn out to be the way you expected, diba?
yes,
Sobrang sakit for you yun. So doon nagsa-start yung anxiety minsan, stress, loneliness,
correct.
diba? So,
And
it pays to
And so,
step back.
if that happens to you, anong ginagawa mo dyan?
Kaya nga dapat like this is one of the things, part of the things na ginagawa ko. You have to have an outlet. So yung sinasabi nila, you have to have an extension of what you do. Kasi kung puro ka work and wala kang ibang extension, if you don't have a hobby, you don't have a sport, ako usually, ako madali lang kasi ako yung mag-diffuse eh. So normally makapanood lang ako ng NBA or makapanood lang ako ng sporting event, happy na ako.
Okay.
Ganun, makakain lang ako ng gusto kong kainin, makapagluto ako ng gusto kong lutuin, I'm happy.
Yes.
So yun.
Ako kasi mga mamaps, when I experience those things, talagang the tendency is you really have to make time. Alam mo yon, yun nga balance yan eh. Na minsan, ako, honestly, I tend to sometimes forget. Ayan. So, next type of loneliness is yung untrustworthy, di ba?
Nasabi mo na ba? Hindi pa ba?
Hindi pa,
Untrustworthy.
na-mention ko lang, 'di ba? Kasi ang dogs are loyal friends. Ang ang tao, di mo minsan at totoo lang.
Hindi ko lang mag-gets yung yung untrustworthy friends. Kasi di ba friends mo naman sila? How will you feel if they're your close friends and then you will feel na sila ay
Hindi nga, kaya nga
untrustworthy?
your best friend is your best enemy, 'di ba? Or your worst enemy, 'di ba? Because ako personally, mga mamaps and papaps, I have experienced that my entire life. A lot of untrustworthy friends. Ayan. Kasi they can be your friends, but at the worst time that you need them, the mistake is you think that they will be there for you. And most of the time, ako medyo magnet ako dyan eh. Yung being used and abused. So, yan sa lahat ng 7 types of loneliness, yan yung pinaka sigurong major na dahilan why I feel lonely. Kasi kasi ako yung type na tao na I take the person as I meet them. You know, you easily trust na, they're nice, they go to church, yung mga ganyan drama, mga pag hindi pa kayo yung actual na nagbabangga, magkaibigan kayo. Pero pag nagkaroon kayo ng conflict, dun mo makikita talaga if that person is really your friend. Yun na lang ang sa akin on how I deal with it. At the end of the day, as long as you have done what is right and try to fix it and try to, accept the person for who they are, and then if you still wants to be friends with them, then go ahead. But if you don't, then you just have to move on. Kasi talagang you cannot control other people. So, it does make you feel lonely, but and sometimes it leaves an irreparable damage on how you trust people. But at the end of the day, you will just have to pray that sooner or later there are people who are really good and who are going to be there if you need them. So yun lang, yung loneliness na yon, it will also pass just like everything else. Ayan. Ikaw, Jack.
What do you mean?
Did you go through that kind of
Personally, no,
loneliness?
hindi naman. I think na-experience mo lang yan. Kasi personally, hindi ko naman na-experience na I had untrustworthy friends, no? I think because nagkakaroon kayo ng drift, mainly because matagal na kayong hindi nag-uusap or matagal na kayong hindi nakikita. So, pag nafe-feel mo yun, na parang I don't feel as close with my best friend anymore or my close friends anymore. Probably because you have things that you have to undergo through personally. Kasi sometimes we try to parang alienate ourselves eh. Kasi ako minsan may tendency ako mga ganun. I don't necessarily want to reach out to my friends, even the closest friends I have, because I'm not readily available to talk about certain situations in my life. So, pag ready na ako, saka lang ako nag-reach out. So, sometimes, feel ko yung loneliness, not probably because I think they're untrustworthy, probably because I'm not ready to share something yet to them, even if they are my closest friends.
And then I guess you're a lucky guy. And then I'm an unlucky gal. So anyway, on the next, sorry, ano yun?
Kanya-kanya.
Correct. So next, the last type of loneliness, Jack.
Go ahead.
Ikaw na, ako na nagsabi nung last eh.
Quiet presence loneliness.
Oh.
So ano yung quiet presence loneliness? Siguro, ito yung mga na-feel ng mga, I think yung mga someone passes away, diba? Someone, yung parang may emptiness ka na na-feel because biglang sobrang tahimik biglaan ng paligid mo. For example, or someone like a close friend migrates, for example, tapos you don't get to do or get to call or get to talk to that person anymore. So, yun, yung nagkakaroon ka ng suddenly quiet presence.
Yan yung mga siguro most common time ko nararamdaman yan is when you, like for example, although ngayong pandemic, you don't have to go out and eat, but halimbawa, kasi alam nyo mga mamaps and papaps, when I was a bit younger, one of the distressing ko is I travel by myself. I love to travel by myself. I go to a new place by myself, alone. Yan. Once a year yan, ginagawa ko yan when I was still single. So, although single na ulit ako ngayon. And unfortunately, I cannot do that kasi nga dahil sa pandemya na to. But, yan minsan mararamdaman mo. Like, for example, you are in a crowded place. Pagkatapos, you have to eat dinner by yourself. And then, suddenly, you will feel missing something or missing someone or and then you feel a little bit lonely. Ayan. O kaya naman mga mamas and papas, ako na experience ko yan kapag ang crowd ay hindi ko crowd. Halimbawa, I went to a party with a good friend of mine and masyadong highfalutin society yung crowd ba. And then, you cannot get to relate with the crowd. Yung ganon. So, at the end of the day, you feel alone and then kind of lonely kasi parang you feel alienated. Yung ganon. So, ako mga mamas and papaps, honestly, for this, normally, ang solution ko sa kanya is just to drink alcohol during those times. Kasi para sa akin, temporary yung feeling na yun eh. Now, however, just like all the doctors and will tell you na of course, alcohol, cigarettes, all these temporary outlets that we tend to address our loneliness are all external. So, what you need to do is really face head on and address being alone, and then trying to find how to communicate within yourself and be good and feel good about it. Yun talaga eh. You have to really face it head on. Yung ano yan mga mamas and papas, it's not going to be easy. It's not gonna be walk in the park. You can, like yun nga sinasabi ni Jack, you can watch NBA. Ako, I can watch Korean telenovela. But these are all, and speaking of telenovela, we have, a video about, what to do and activities to do in quarantine, and also movies to watch in Netflix. All of these things can be done, but these are all external. So what you need to do is find within yourself how you can really love yourself. Yan kasi minsan yung kulang sa atin eh. We try to keep finding our happiness outside, like depending it from other people. But yung happiness kasi talaga, it's a choice and it's something that you have to find within yourself. Yan mga mamas and papaps ang advice ko personally. But ewan ko kay Jack, anong advice niya as a parting words on how you can deal with your loneliness? Ayan. Oh. Sige, Jack. Hear it.
I mean, ang dami pwedeng gawin kasi. So, ang dami na natin pinigdiskusyonan, lalo na pagdating sa depression. It's similar to what I can say about feeling anxious or depressed. Now, feeling lonely, it's best to keep yourself busy. Tapos, do something which kung ano yung end result. Kasi if you just do something out of nowhere, nagagawin mo lang, na hindi mo alam kung ano yung pwede mong ma-benefit out of it, parang hindi ka rin mag-enjoy, di ba? So, try to do that, and then probably learn a new skill probably. Is a good thing. So, like during this pandemic, it's very important na even if you're just staying at home, probably watch something na, halimbawa yung mga masterclass, madaming nada-download na masterclass for free actually. And then, yun, ang problema kasi is the absence of familiarity. Yun usually ang nangyayari kapag nagiging lonely ka. So, biglang nawawala yung familiar things na ginagawa mo, like work, diba, nasabay ka na lang. So, find something na you are really interested and then familiar with it, be good at it, master it, and then perhaps after this pandemic, you can apply it in real life, diba?
Ayon. So, yan mga mamaps and papaps, we hope we did not make you feel lonely in our video. And we provided you some insight that you are not alone in this journey, mga mamaps and papaps. Yun lang. Just as I've said, love yourself. Kasi yung iba, it tends to become a depression, and then it leads to a not so good ending. So mga mamaps and papaps, thank you always for the support on Facial Value, and please do comment below on what you do when you become lonely. Ayan. So mga mamaps and papaps, don't be lonely. Bye-bye!